Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on Coffee with Democrats. I'm so excited to be sharing a screen with all of you amazing women who are doing great things in your state. We are here on the anniversary of the fall of Roe versus the protections provided by Roe versus Wade. When on June 24th in 2022, the Supreme Court ruled that in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, effectively ending the federal constitutional right to abortion in the United States. So we're here today really just to talk about the impact of that decision in our communities and how it's affecting women in our states and what we're doing to try and help women overcome those challenges. So I'm Kerri Keck, moderator today, and I'm running for Oklahoma State House of Representatives for District 26, which is in the central part of Oklahoma, representing the communities of Shawnee, Dale, Johnson, and Bethel Acres. I really love my state and I love my community. I served in the Army for 23 years, and I just have a service mindset, and I really want to serve the people of my community and fight for protections and fight for our communities. Here in Oklahoma, we have a supermajority legislature. We've had one for over a decade now. And unfortunately, we're at the bottom in many measurable statistics to include women's health and social and economic well-being, education, and children's health and well-being. So we had a lot of work to do, but I am focused on solutions, and the Army taught me how to solve problems well. And that's really what I want to bring to our state legislature. So I'm so excited to be in this space with you amazing, inspiring women. And I just wanted to introduce all of you and then allow you the opportunity to introduce yourself. So Jane George is a candidate for Tennessee House District 2. Oh, sorry. No.
Oh, yes. House District 2. Yes. U.S. Congress, right. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. U.S. Congress.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Gloria Johnson, and who is also from Tennessee and a candidate for U.S. Senate. Jess Piper, who's the executive director for Bloom, Missouri. And Michele, remind me your title, please.
Michele Hornish. I'm the executive director of Every State Blue, the umbrella organization for Blue, Missouri, Blue, Tennessee, and Blue, Ohio.
Cool. I love all the blue. Besides green, blue is one of my favorite colors. So thank you all for being here. And I'd like for each of you to just introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you're trying to do in your state. So Gloria, would you mind kicking us off?
Sure. Yes, my name is Gloria Johnson. I kind of is known now as one of the Tennessee Three, but State House District 90 in Tennessee, which is a part of Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm in Red, East Tennessee. And after being in the legislature for 8 years and seeing the Tennessee supermajority legislate hate and things that do absolutely nothing to lift up Tennessee families, and they're doing serious damage to women and girls in Tennessee, I decided to step up and run for U.S. Senate so that we could get some help there to put some guardrails on for women and vulnerable communities in Tennessee, because there's except for Congressman Cohen, there's no one in Tennessee, in D.C., working for Tennessee families.
Okay, thank you for all that incredibly hard work. And I do remember the Tennessee Three, and the fights that you all are just fighting to protect Tennessee, and so I really appreciate that. Jane, would you mind introducing us to you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us on here today, Kerri. It's a momentous day for sure. I'm a sixth generation East Tennessean, so my family's been here a long time. And my motivation to step up for this particular race and this specific position is all centered around women's rights. So the reproductive right issue is a big piece of it, but of course there's a lot of tentacles that extend beyond that create circumstances for women other than those who are in reproductive age. So And we're seeing lots of consequences already starting to happen economically, and it's having a huge impact on our rural communities. So that is where I am focused. And of course, that extends into things like equitable wage issues and access to healthcare beyond reproductive rights. So women's rights specifically, and I'm excited to be doing it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jane. And I think all of us share the fact that we have a large rural populations, large rural parts of our states, and those areas tend to be left out a lot. And so I'm glad to see that we're all fighting for some of the same things. Jess, would you mind sharing with us?
Yes, it sounds like you're paging rural folks, so here I am. My name is Jess Piper. I'm from Northwest Missouri in a town of 480 people. I was a teacher for 16 years and had no plans to, involve myself in running for office. But in 2019, Missouri passed an abortion ban with no exemptions for rape or incest. My representative wrote my local paper about how excited he was to pass this ban, and I was just enraged. And then in 2020, I went to vote for Joe Biden, and there was no one on my ticket to vote for state representative. So that got me thinking, if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. So it really was that abortion ban in Missouri that, was a precursor to what happened nationwide that got me involved. And as the other women can attest to, being in, these deeply GOP dominated states, we're having a difficult time accessing maternal health at all, much less accessing abortion. And so all of these, just like Jane was talking about, this impacts us economically. So our entire state is suffering from an abortion ban that actually led to all kinds of healthcare bans. And so I'm proud to be with you today. Thank you for doing this, Kerri. Thank you to all the women who are joining us today.
Thank you so much, Jess. And Michele, tell us about Every State Blue.
Oh, I am not a candidate for office, but what we do with Every State Blue, what I do at Every State Blue, is create communities that crowdfund underfunded Democrats, particularly those who are running in some of the reddest districts in the reddest states in the country. And that's important from the abortion standpoint, because we know that some of the most extreme legislation comes from the most extreme legislators who happen to be gerrymandered into some of the safest districts in these red states. Mm-hmm. And so not having people who are running against those people, not having people who are funded and supported running against those people, means that we're giving them the runway that they need in order to get cases up to the Supreme Court of the United States. So there's been a two-part strategy that Republicans have had for decades now. One of them is, gerrymandering themselves into these safe districts where they can start passing this extreme legislation. And because we haven't been fighting in those areas, we've given them the ability to do that sort of unencumbered. So Every State Blue, our mission, my mission in life, is to make sure that the people who are running against the extremists in these red states aren't going it alone.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. All very good points, and that's exactly what we experienced here in my community. In our recent primary race on the 18th, there was one position I could vote for on the slate of candidates of around, I think it was 7 total positions. And some of those, I don't even understand why they are partisan positions. The county commissioner, county clerk, county sheriff, I don't understand why they have anything to do with party, but there are a lot of gerrymandered districts in Oklahoma, and it's definitely allowed our state legislature to be Republican controlled for a decade now. So okay, thank you all so much for your stories. On the day that Roe fell, Oklahoma's trigger law went into effect, and it banned all abortions statewide. Now in 2023, the Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled that ban that didn't exempt or provide exceptions for saving the life of the mother was unconstitutional. So now we do have laws banning abortions, except for to be able to save the life of the mother. Another 60 other states that have banned or severely restricted abortion, and women just can't get access to the care that they need. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that, the harms or the things that you are seeing as a result of those bans in your states. The harm that it's causing or how it's impacting women in your state. So I would like for Jane to go first on this one.
Sure. So we're seeing a number of things, and I'm sure Gloria is going to talk about this also, because there's going to be some overlap between what I'm a district inside of Gloria's state. So the issues that we're seeing are issues that she's, I'm sure, going to also speak to. But I'll talk about the ones that I find to be primarily discouraging in terms of women's health and the impacts that have happened in such a small amount of time. So since the trigger ban went into place here after the fall of Roe v. Wade, and we learned that we no longer had the protection of the Constitution, there have been about an estimated about 5,000 pregnancies in the state of Tennessee that are due to rape or incest. So those are women who do not have options within the state. And so many women who live in this state don't have the option to leave. They don't have childcare. They can't leave their jobs. They don't have transportation costs. They can't stay somewhere else. So there are a lot of confounding issues in their personal lives that may prevent them from even being able to go and get that care in another state. So these women are literally being forced to carry pregnancies after that kind of violation. And, that leads me to something that I think is important for us to talk about whenever we talk about whether or not we have a right to care if our health is compromised. And the key word there is usually physically compromised. And even we tend to talk about it that way. But I want to encourage women to start realizing that you are more than a vessel, that you have a right to a life that is more than physical. You have a right to a life that's financially healthy, that is emotionally healthy, that particularly impacts these people who have been through violent assault and are forced to carry how does that ever go away? A child who's forced to carry pregnancy. So I think we have to change that narrative to really look at those other kinds of health and well-being that we also deserve to have. So we don't see ourselves through that lens of a vessel. It changes the conversation. I think it's also interesting to see that there are so many women now asking and talking about, are there any government regulations on men with regard to medical procedures for reproductive health? And it seems outlandish, and most people respond with that, But the truth is, we are so programmed to believe we're only worth our physical health and that nothing could be done in terms of looking at the other side, the other person involved in creating this pregnancy. So those are things that we really want to bring to light. The SCOTUS passing SCOTUS in terms of mifepristone. I was in DC when we first stood in front of the Supreme Court and with allied organizations. And I can tell you that it was not good for Tennessee. And I really see it as political jockeying. It is an opportunity for this, what I feel is a very biased court, and an opportunity for them to stand up and say, look, we did something right. But the truth is, it's exactly like Roe with respect to Tennessee, which means they're giving it back to the state. And that's exactly what happened with Roe, right? And so as long as we don't have equal rights across state lines, we're not a democracy. If we consider healthcare to be a basic human right, and that varies across state lines for women who are the majority of Americans, maybe only slightly, but still the majority, then we're not a democracy. And we're starting to actually take away rights. And whether you want to call it a republic or a democracy is irrelevant. We're a republic democracy. Our rights in terms of state lines and how basic healthcare should be consistent. So those are some of the big ones. I know Gloria will address some of the other issues. So those are the ones that I feel like are uniquely maybe things we're talking about in our campaign. And of course, any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer if I can.
Thank you so much, Jane. Well, Gloria, would you like to speak about some of the things that Jane just mentioned and then what you're seeing as well?
Sure. One thing that we know is more than 10,000 women have left the state of Tennessee to get the care that they need. It is so sad that Tennesseans have to leave their state in order to get the care that they so desperately need. Um, and we talked about rural communities and we are forcing in Tennessee, we are giving more rights to a violent rapist by allowing a violent rapist to choose the mother of their child and not allowing a woman to choose not to have that violent rapist baby. It is remarkable that this is where we are. I think it's barbaric. And certainly forcing a 10-year-old to carry a pregnancy when we know that Tennessee has one of the top 3 maternal mortality rates in the country. And children die at 2 times the rate of adult women carrying a pregnancy. We're not only robbing these children of their childhood, the incident of the rape is horrifying enough, but to force them to remember it every day by carrying that rapist child is just barbaric. And the fact that in our rural communities and across this state, we have more than 1/3 of our state with no OBGYN and no delivery room. So folks are traveling, if a 10-year-old with a pregnancy has a problem, they could be an hour and a half away from a hospital and an OBGYN and the care that they need. And we already know that I know 3 OBGYNs who have left the state because of our laws. And we have one of the strictest. We don't have an exception for life of the mother. The only exception we have is for ectopic, molar, or dead fetuses. None of those becomes a viable fetus. None of them. For the rest of it, we have what is called an affirmative defense. But what that means is we've created a relationship where the closer to death the woman is, the safer the physician is in doing the care, providing the care that this woman needs to stay alive. We are literally waiting till hospitals spend time with lawyers to decide if they're going to treat someone or not, putting them at a high risk of death. And so it is outrageous to me that this supermajority has literally put the lives of women in danger. We mean so little in Tennessee. We actually had representatives on the House floor say, well, we're going to take care of that baby first and we'll see what we can do for the mom. I mean, hearing that while I'm sitting on the floor was just unbelievable. But this is who they are. I brought legislation to make an exception for those children who are under 13. Because in Tennessee, sadly, 13 can agree to sex if the person they're with is 4 years or more, 4 years or less older. So if you are 12 and under, then you are considered raped if you are pregnant. You don't have to prove it. You were raped if you were under 13 years old. So I brought legislation to please, do an exemption for those babies, those children having children, and every Republican voted against it. It is just sickening to me. And then we have not expanded Medicaid. This is one of the reasons our maternal mortality rate is so high. Women don't have health care up until the time they decide to start a family, to know that they are healthy and ready to start their family, because women should be able to choose when they want to actually start a family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria, for that. You talked about the legislation that basically made it legal for 13-year-olds to make decisions about their bodies. And we saw legislation like that in Oklahoma this last session, that the legislature was trying to pass a bill to do the same thing. And I was wondering where that came from. So it does seem like, obviously, our Republican-controlled legislatures and Republican-controlled states are just passing around this legislation that does awful things for the people that they represent without real thought to the people that they are representing or the impact those people that legislation will cause. Like Tennessee, Oklahoma, 75% of Oklahoma OBGYNs have that were surveyed don't practice evidence-based care because of the restrictive laws and their concern for being sued or put in prison for trying to provide evidence-based care. And 76% were planning to leave the state of Oklahoma or had thought about leaving the state of Oklahoma because they couldn't practice evidence-based care without fear of being jailed or fined terrible amounts. So it's already increasing our large maternal health deserts in the state. That's just making it worse, just like in Tennessee, to access the services that women need, making women have to travel for hours to get the care that they need. Women in Oklahoma, we've seen women in Oklahoma have to travel outside of the state just to get life-saving medical treatment. Wow. And I just think that is a travesty and something that we all need to fight. So I would like to hear, yes, go.
I'm just going to add to that, because I think it's important that we also talk, when we're talking about what's happening in these maternal deserts, that it also is affecting women of non-reproductive age. So there's no internist who's going to give a 75-year-old woman a pap smear. They don't have a clue how. They don't know how to do breast exams. They haven't done it their whole lives. They don't have the sensitivity for it. So we're not in a situation where it's just affecting women of reproductive age. But there are women now in our rural communities who can't get access to quality care in terms of their hormone replacement, bone density care, surgeries that need to be done, cancer screenings. These are all things that are now affecting women beyond those of reproductive age. I just think it's important that we also make note of that. This is all women.
You, Jane, for bringing that to our attention, because that is something that I neglected to talk about. And Jess, what about you in Missouri? What all are you seeing?
Well, let me just tell you a real quick story. My husband was diagnosed with advanced heart failure a couple of years ago, and he presented into the ER with an ejection fraction rate of 15%. He was dying. He was not forced to go out to the car and wait to get care. They immediately saw him. They saw how sick he was. They sent him 2 hours from our home, because we live in the middle of nowhere and don't have access to great care. And he was able to get great care at KU. There were no lawyers involved. Nobody asked him, how close to death he was. Nobody was waiting on him to die to access care. And I think that's very important for people to understand. We are asking that women be how close to death? How low does your blood pressure need to go? How much do you need to bleed out? How septic do you need to be before you can access care to live? And that is, like Gloria said, that is outrageous that we are doing this. Missouri has seen a 25% drop in OB residents wanting to come to this state because they cannot practice ethically. My daughter is a nanny for a high-risk OB. They were from Kansas City, Missouri. As soon as she graduated, they moved to Overland Park, Kansas, because she cannot ethically practice as an OB, a high-risk OB in the state of Missouri. We lost somebody who could take care of moms and babies, and she went to Kansas because she can't stay in Missouri. So to say that this is a crisis is even not enough of verbiage. We are killing women and girls and older women, like Jane said, who can't access breast exams, right? I live in a maternal desert. I traveled 1 hour and 15 minutes to deliver my daughter. If I were high risk, it would have been over 2 hours. And where would my family stay? How could my husband do that? What is he going to do? Sleep in the car? Like, they don't understand what they are doing to people by not expanding Medicaid and also passing bans that they don't understand. We had a state representative named Brian Seitz who wrote a bill to ban the treatment of ectopic pregnancies. And he went on the floor, and a Democrat, talked to him like, what do you mean? Do you know what an ectopic pregnancy is? He did not know what it was. He didn't know the treatment for an ectopic pregnancy is an abortion. So we are dealing with people who don't even understand women's bodies, which is no surprise because we don't study women's bodies like we should, right? But all of this is going on with ignorance abounding, with Christian nationalists who stand up and say they're against abortion because it's against their religion. Well, sorry, practice your religion in your closet like your Christ told you to do, and leave the rest of us alone to access medical care in the 21st century. It's an outrage what's going on.
Yes. Thank you, Jess. Your passion is incredible, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And not to make light of anything, obviously, this is serious circumstances for all women and impacts all women and girls. I think, I don't understand why it's acceptable to have political interference in our healthcare system. It wouldn't be acceptable for men, and I don't know how it's acceptable for women. Michele, would you like to share with us what you are doing to help with this situation, or what you're seeing as well?
Certainly. So, I mean, I live in Missouri, just as Jess does, but I work in a lot of different states, particularly red states, and one of them is Ohio. And on one of our Blue Ohio calls that we had the leader of the Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, which is a grassroots organization that was started when this particular physician, the week after Dobbs, got a phone call from one of her patients' mothers. She received this call from a young woman's mother saying, "How should I protect my daughter? What should I do here?" And the conversation that we had with her just reiterated to me something that I think gets lost, and that Jess's passion brings up again, and that, Gloria saying that this is barbaric. Absolutely. This is a medical emergency. Every single day in all of these states, this is a medical emergency. And that requires acting with passion and with resolve and with immediacy. And I feel like sometimes in the political environment, we want to sit back and take some time and think about things and maybe get some polling and statistics. And there's no time for that. There are people who are dying. There are people who doctors are waiting to see, like Jess said. How far do they have to allow someone to go? How close to death do I need to be in order for a physician to know that their license is not on the line? That isn't something that we should be asking physicians to have to ask. They're supposed to take care of us. They want to take care of us. But our legislators, these super majority Republican state legislators, they've put us in this terrible, awful position. I had some medical challenges over the last year, and it was jarring to me to see that every time before I received treatment that I needed to stay alive, they did a pregnancy test every time. And I knew that if the results of that pregnancy test came back positive, that my treatment that day would be delayed, and that I would have to start having conversations about where to go and what to do. That should not be happening in 2024.
Thank you all for sharing your stories with us. And there's a young lady here who's in a town that's not even 10 miles outside of my district, and she experienced the same thing. She had a molar pregnancy, and which means that the fetus is non-viable, and she could bleed to death if she weren't able to receive the treatment that she needs. And she sat in the parking lot of a hospital here in Oklahoma, and they told her to go back out to the parking lot and sit in that parking lot until she became sick enough that she might die, before that they would be able to provide any treatment for her. She had to travel to Kansas to get the treatment she needed, hours away in pain and unbearable pain, and her husband driving her, considering the fact that she might die at any minute, just to get the treatment that she needed. And that is unacceptable. It's horrible. It's horrendous, and women shouldn't have to be experiencing that. This session, our legislature, so not only are they restricting access to abortion, now we've seen attacks on things like in vitro fertilization and contraception. Here in Oklahoma, we had a bill this last session that legislature tried to pass to prevent, to effectively legislate IUDs, the use of IUDs and Plan B, to disallow utilization of those. And violators who would face up to 10 years in prison or a $10,000 or hundreds of $1,000s in fines. That is care, that is reproductive care, and they're trying to legislate that without any input from medical doctors. I just don't understand how it's become a political weapon as opposed to essential health care. We need reliable and unrestricted access to safe reproductive care. So in order to do that, we obviously need to elect more Democrats, right? So I'd like to discuss everyone to just talk about the things that you are trying to do, or how we can get more Democrats elected, how we can get women to get out and vote for Democrats in our states. So Jess, would you mind starting us off on this one?
I would love to. It's what I do. I travel the country speaking to small Democratic groups and cheerleading them and trying to get people in their communities to run. And I went to Kansas, a tiny little, it's called Cherokee County in Kansas. And we met in an old J.C. Penney building. And there were about 60 people there. And I mean, they stood up and they were passionate. The first woman who spoke talked about, we're from John Brown. Like this is who we are. We are fiery progressives, and we have got to stand up and do something in the state of Kansas. And there was a man who stood up afterward, and he was pointing folks out in the crowd. Joe, you said you were going to run for commissioner someday. Today might be the day. You know, just pointing people out and calling them out and saying, we have got to do something. And every time I leave a room, people decide they're going to run for office. And that's what we have to do. We have to go to these places. I meet with people in the basement of churches because they don't know what they're going to do. They're a little scared of what's going on in their community. But we have to say, hey, I'm in the middle of the sticks here. I put out a Biden sign. It was stolen. I bought another and put it out again, right? We are here, and people are going to drive by and see that I'm here, and it's okay to be a Democrat in spaces like this. And beyond that, once you've gotten your community and you found your crew, it's time to get on the ballot, because in 2022, 40% of Missouri seats were unopposed. People always say, you vote against your self-interest. Well, friend, how would I vote in my self-interest if I've got no one on the ballot, right? And so that's when we talk people into doing the hard work. And that's why we do what we do, and we fund people who stick their neck out, because we asked them to do it, we need them to do it, and we need to fund them in the same space. So it's getting behind people, rallying behind them, and giving them the support they need, even in these small, very rural, very red districts that we know are not going to flip in a cycle. They might not flip in 2 or 3 cycles, but this is the long game, and this is how we play it, and this is how we claw ourselves back. And I'm telling you, it's going to come from red states, because in things like vouchers, we saw that the only reason that they didn't pass in Texas and likely in Tennessee as well is because rural Republicans knew they could not defund schools in their communities. The same thing is going to come with every one of these progressive issues. It's going to come down to people in these rural red states standing up and say, nope, not on my watch. We're done, and we're going to stand up and do something about it.
Yes, the rural communities, we have power, and we just need to use it to stand up for the things that matter. Michele, would you like to elaborate on what you all are doing in Missouri?
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is sort of my reason for being. So as Jessica's talking, I'm like keeping myself from jumping out of my chair and applauding, because that's exactly the point, right? Is making sure that we are fighting everywhere, that we are pushing everywhere, that we are having conversations everywhere. Leave no Democrat behind, leave no district behind. It is really difficult. The Democratic parties in these red states have the toughest job. I say this all the time. They have the toughest job, and they're working so hard. They have to keep the blue districts that they have. They have to work really hard to flip the purple districts that they want to flip, that look like they might be flipping. They need to be breaking the supermajority, but that's not enough. They are chronically under-resourced. And so we need to push in and help them help other people, right? So if we want to fight everywhere, that means that we have to actually fight everywhere. And so we create communities of people that crowdsource or crowdfund for the Democrats who are running in the seats that normally don't get any funding at all. And that's how we can go out and ask people to run. And then when they say, well, what kind of support am I going to get? Well, you know, you've got Blue Tennessee behind you. You know, we're going to give you some funding. We're going to give you some support. And we've got a community of people who really are cheering you on. In Ohio, we launched in 2022. And this cycle, this year, we are ensuring that there's a funding floor for Democratic nominees of $7,325. So no Democratic nominee for Ohio State Legislature has less than $7,000 to run their campaign. That's huge. In 2020, there were 13 Democratic nominees that had less than $5,000. In Tennessee, last cycle, same thing. In 2022, there were 13 Democratic nominees that had less than $5,000. In Missouri in 2020, there were 8 that had less than $1,000. I mean, these districts, these seats are traditionally underfunded and unsupported or undersupported, but we're taking that on so that we can be having these difficult conversations, these tough conversations, and doing the hard work in these districts and supporting the people that are willing to stick their neck out. So here in Missouri, we had an incredible year of recruiting. So even though last cycle, we had 40% of the seats that were unopposed, this cycle we have nominees, and I think we have districts that are contested in 134 out of 163, which is unbelievable, right? And that's what happens. In Tennessee's a similar story, right? That's what happens when people hear like, oh, wait, Democrats are going to fight everywhere. And they're going to fund me. They're going to make sure that I'm not doing this by myself. We can create the support system that will help those people. And to be honest, like there's that moral reason to do this, but there's also the electoral reason to do it. We've shown, our studies have shown, Run for Something studies have shown, the Analyst Institute has run studies that have shown that when we run people in these districts, we increase the turnout for the top of the ticket by a significant amount, 1.5%. That's a lot. In a statewide race like Gloria's running, we want to make sure that we're running and that we're fighting in every district so that we can bring out all of these voters that we need in order to flip these states. So that's why we do what we're doing. We're pushing everywhere. We're fighting everywhere.
Absolutely, fighting everywhere. And Gloria, you are part of the Fighting Tennessee 3, so I'd love to hear from you how you all are getting the vote out for Democrats in Tennessee.
Well, one thing was when we went to the well, it really energized the Democrats in Tennessee. And so many people stepped up to run, they tell me, because of that, because they wanted to join the fight. They wanted to be a part of it. And I'm just so grateful that these folks have stepped up. Real quality candidates all across our state. When I first started thinking about running for U.S. Senate, I was like, well, we're not sure. We think there's a path, to victory, but we're not sure. But what we can do is get out there and motivate the Democratic base to go and vote. We are 50th or 51st in voter turnout every year in the last few years. There are 300,000 Tennessee Democrats who haven't voted in the last few cycles. Marsha Blackburn won by only 200,000 votes last time. We get these 300,000 folks out, we make them understand what's at stake, and we win. And when we win the U.S. Senate seat, which we now have a clear path to, we flip a lot of state house and state Senate races along the way. And so that is really what we're doing. We're focusing on spending time in those counties where we can flip seats. I'm going to all 95 counties. Someone hasn't done that in a while. My opponent is going to 95 counties, she says. However, it's closed door meetings with the county officials. And that's all I've seen. I haven't seen her out with the people unless it's a Republican Party event. She's a little bit of afraid of talking to regular folks who may not agree with her. And I'm just inspired by all of these candidates who stepped up. In my tour of the counties, I was in a couple of rural counties last week they have always struggled to get candidates. They have every Democratic seat filled this time. Both of these two counties, Wilson and Sumner County. And those are tough counties, but they've got someone running in every seat. Everyone in Tennessee deserves a choice, because the reality is the legislators we have in the supermajority are not working for Tennessee families. They are working for the special interest. And Tennessee families need childcare. They need paid family leave. We need higher wages. We need access to affordable health care. We need to expand Medicaid. And not only are our folks at the federal level fighting against that, but our state house is as well. There's nobody out there working for Tennessee families. And So making people understand that is so important. And with all of these voices out there running for office, we're being heard, and no one's afraid to say abortion and talk about abortion being health care. And it's made a difference already. In the Vanderbilt poll a couple of weeks ago, I'm polling ahead of Marsha Blackburn with women 49% to 43%. And we never expected that more than 5 months before the election. So it's having an effect. Women are thinking differently, and we are all out there talking about it.
That's incredible and so exciting to be that far ahead so early in the election cycle. So congratulations. But I mean, keep up the hard work.
I'm not ahead in the overall, but with
Yes.
women, I am 6 points ahead. And then she dropped 2 points and I raised 4 points. If we do that one more time, then I'm ahead overall.
And if it's like Oklahoma, women make up just a little bit, and as Jane mentioned, women make up just a little bit more than 50% of the population. So if we can just get women energized and engaged and out to vote, and the men that support women and think and understand that women should have access to safe and reliable medical care, which includes reproductive care and abortion, then I know we can flip these seats. So Jane, how about you?
I mean, it would be remiss of me to not first just start by saying all that work that Gloria's doing and her campaign are going to absolutely benefit this campaign. So we're so grateful because the support that she's getting is going to fill into the districts in terms of getting out the vote, as you talked about, and getting people educated about the issues. So our goal then has to be to make sure that those people know where I stand on those issues, right? So she's opening the doors, and I sure have to make sure I walk through them, right? That's really going to be important. So we're doing a couple of things. We started a program within the campaign called the Women's Ambassadors for Change program. There's a website if you want to check it out. It's womensambassadors.org. And it's a program where we want women who are under 30 to start engaging with each other in building political perspectives, understanding, and action. So learning how to be your own advocate and advocating for friends, learning how to get people registered by just having an app on your phone that when you go to a party, you throw it out on the table and say, make sure everybody fills this out before you leave, right? Or encouraging them to upload that app. And then learning how to throw an event and how to have a fundraiser, learning how to be aware of what's happening in your communities, but also what I find really important is learning how to find how your representatives are actually voting. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in manipulation, obviously in social media. There's a lot of propaganda. But one of the things that we know for sure is that if you know how to look up how your legislators are voting, sometimes those stories are not congruent with what they're saying, right? Or you're just getting a piece of it in social media, but you're not really seeing how dangerous some of the votes are for women in general. And that, in my case with domestic violence against women, my opponent actually voted against that act. It was just an opportunity to renew it. And he voted against that act in a belief that the perpetrator had a greater right to own a gun than the woman who had been violated. So, those are the kinds of things that lay sort of dormant, the PACT Act, there's so many things. I went to talk to a group of women veterans a couple of weeks ago and sit down with them. And it was really interesting when you have just women veterans talking to you, for them to talk about how different their system is. And of course, what their access to healthcare looks like and their reproductive healthcare looks like. And that's kind of terrifying. They've now passed laws that if you are stationed in a state and you are a female who's from a state where abortion is accessible and legal, and you are stationed in a state where it is not, you are therefore do not have that option. Right? This just happened in the last couple of days. So it's having this disproportionate impact on women, even in their own ability to get care within our military service, right? So we have to find ways to make sure that people know that we're out here and what we're advocating for. And of course, the biggest barrier for me and my campaign, of course, to all of that is how expensive all that costs. That costs a lot of money. And in districts like mine, and so thank you, Michele, for the work you're doing, because in districts like mine, people really genuinely believe there's no way we can do it, and it's harder for them to make that investment. So it's incredible to know there are women organizations out there organizing to support us and say, hey, we do value you and we are going to help you, because in some ways, Democrats can eat their own when it comes to that, because the other party, people do get a little something, and we don't. Unless you're on that red to blue list, right? Which how do you get there if you don't start there? So that's the big deal, and continuing to talk to women, and then making sure that women's stories are heard, whether it's personal stories or it's the stories of the physicians. I met with the woman who's the head of the residency program for OBGYNs at UT. She's a physician, of course, and she was talking about how they're no longer even training doctors in the state of Tennessee to do DNCs, which are, of course, used for so many other healthcare. My background is in healthcare. I've been a functional medicine doctor, but in women's healthcare my whole life. And some of the things that are fascinating to me, I studied biology. My degree's in biology, but I did the women's studies program at UCLA. It was a radical program back in the 90s. And it's really fascinating to see how little has changed when you start looking at numbers and data. When you talk about living wage, it's so easy to talk about minimum wage, right? But we need to be talking about equitable wage, because in the state of Tennessee, women make 70 cents on the dollar for the same job with the same education. And this is still true across the country. It's not 70 cents. It's gotten up into the 80 cents marks in some other places. But, we're graduating from college more. We're graduating from law school, medical school more than men are right now. We are at least 58% of the spends in the economy. And that number comes from 2021 are coming from women. So the impacts on the economy are going to be extraordinary if not only we need to make these reproductive choices much clearer and protected by law. And we're actually working with the ACLU, some other organizations, to be able to talk to people if you have questions about, well, what is the law? How are you trying to get in? How is it going to look different? I'm happy to talk about that too. Maybe not today, but whenever, there are different ways to come in. We can't go in the same way we did last time with Roe v. Wade. We can't do it under liberty because the Liberty Clause has already got a precedent. So right to privacy is no longer a legitimate way to do it. We have to find other ways to do it. You can't codify Roe v. Wade because it's a case, it's not a law. So we have to come up with a law that will protect women's rights, that supersedes, extends the ability for a state to be able to make a decision based on their constitution. And of course that goes with birth control and, so many things. But it's shocking when you talk to young women. And I don't know, Gloria, if you've had this experience or any of you, but I can, I walk away from talking with young women so often with tears in my eyes because they're so devastated and demoralized. And so many just think that there's nothing that can be done. I keep reminding them a drop of water doesn't know it's the ocean, but that's all it is a whole bunch of drops of water. So you have to be that. You have to understand that you are that, because there are a lot of women who just feel, what's my vote going to count? And so that's what we're up against here in Tennessee. There are certainly women who are motivated, that come to rallies and all those things. I'm talking about, people that you just might talk to. I sometimes just talk to people on the street or go up to a table in a restaurant and go, hey, listen, that's a little more random than people that are already organizing and accessible or showing up at meetings, So anyway, I suppose that's it.
Well, thank you for sharing that experience and what you all are trying to do. A couple of points that I just wanted to mention, Jane, when you talked about how Congress is making the military a kind of a bargaining chip, right? Bargaining tool. And that's our national defense, national security, national defense, right? But they're using it as a bargaining chip to impact women and women's ability to get the healthcare they need and make the decisions about their own bodies I was a major, I retired as a major in the Army, and I made decisions about an organization of over 500 people on a daily basis, but yet I can't be trusted to make decisions about my own body and what my body needs along with my medical providers. that just is unfathomable to me. I don't understand that at all. And you had mentioned some of the issues with being able to train doctors in states because of the restrictions. Luckily for Oklahoma, we have several Native American tribes that are just taking it on themselves and they understand and they see the impact that these laws have. And because they are sovereign, they are able to utilize that sovereignty to enact their own programs to allow people to allow doctors to train without those restrictions, to be protected so that they can practice in rural areas or understand what women's needs are in areas across Oklahoma. And, the economic impact of women being allowed to have a choice and to have the say over their own bodies, whether or not they're able to participate in our economy, because allowing women to decide when they are ready to have a child and when they want to be in the workforce. So all of those things are so important, and getting women to understand the impacts of these laws and the direct impact for all of those things is so important. So thank you all so much for the work that you're doing. We have just a few more minutes, so I guess time to just sort of our closing comments. So Gloria, if you would like to start and just kind of close us out.
Sure. We've just got to stay vigilant about this fight. We've got to stay in it. We don't know how long it's going to take. As we talked about, you can't codify a row, so to speak. So you've got to pass legislation that doesn't force doctors to have residency at a hospital before they can work in a women's clinic. We've got to allow to make sure federally that women can cross state lines to get the care that they need. We can do all those things at the federal level and more to put those protections in for women that our red states are not going to do until we flip those seats. So we have a fight ahead of us. We should not be fighting this fight again, but we will. I wanted desperately, I told a lot of people, and I knew you didn't have time to organize something this, because a lot of people still didn't believe that Roe would fall. And I think that every woman should have walked out the door of wherever job she was and just left, unless perhaps you were in the middle of surgery. I think that you should have left your job, and we should have walked out and said, we'll work when we are equal citizens. And it would have lasted a week. But that's a lot to ask of a lot of people. It's some privilege in that request, because not everybody can walk out like that. But I think that women have to use their power, and we have to stand together, and we have to get those men who stand with us, because there are a lot of them. And we need to continue to fight, because I don't know about you guys, I'm pretty sure you're not happy being considered as unequal to men. That is not something I'm going to live with for very long, and I will do everything I can and fight with all of those who believe that women are equal and women should have autonomy over their own bodies. And we shouldn't have the government in our doctors' offices. The reality is, I fear for this country's health when they have done everything they can to make people second guess their doctors. They did it with COVID. They do it with transgender care. They do it with pregnancies. They're saying that the doctors, you can't trust the doctors. I think this is a dangerous thing to tell American citizens down the road, and it's going to come back to bite them on the butt. Because the reality is, we can trust our doctors in every state. We can't trust our government to care about every single person. But those doctors have an oath that they take to care for the women and for the fetus. And it needs to be a woman's choice with her body. And we'll keep fighting.
Thank you, Gloria. Jane, how about you?
Oh, I'm all in with Gloria there. I I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be said other than we have to be vigilant. I think her starting that statement is probably one of the most powerful things we all need because it's exhausting. And I know for those of us who've been at it, I mean, I've been at it since October. Gloria's been at it for what, 14 years? She's been doing this work and advocating for rights of Tennesseans, and of course that includes families and children and women, and for our educational system and access to healthcare. She's been carrying the banner for that for a long time. So we want to support her and the work that she's doing. We look forward to the support that we also are getting from those around us who understand the importance of our race. We are, and we just have to keep doing it, and keep showing up. But thank you all. I mean, just making this happen deserves a big thank you and acknowledgement that women are working together to get the word out and to share, and that you are sharing this on Spotify, you're sharing it on Facebook, you're going to have it on YouTube. So it's going to be accessible to people. So thanks for making that happen. And for Coffee with Democrats, for Kevin, thank you. Kevin is here watching. Thank you for making this happen. And Jess, thank you for the work that you are doing. It's extraordinary. I wasn't familiar with your work, so I'm excited about learning more about it. And Michele, and obviously Kerri for all the stuff you're doing, and good luck in your race.
Thank you very much for that, Jane. I appreciate it. Jess, you want to close out?
Absolutely. So I travel into blue states a lot because they think I'm a unicorn. Rural people don't exist who are also progressive. So they always want to hear from me. And I was sitting next to, actually, she was a sister, a nun from New Jersey when I was in DC a few weeks ago. And she said, "Oh my gosh, have you heard of Project 2025?" And I was like, "Girl, we are living it." Every single woman on this call is living under those Project 2025 edicts. We are the canaries in the coal mine. We know what is going to happen to the rest of the country if we don't stop it in our red states. And that's why I'm so glad to have every woman on this call, and all of us so passionate about this. And there's a little bit of good news that I'll leave the people on the call with, and that's this. Missouri was the first state to ban abortion as soon as Roe fell. Our AG could not get in front of a camera fast enough. I think it was like minutes later, right? He signed away our rights. This year, we decided we were going to try to get it on the ballot. We needed 180,000 signatures to put abortion on the ballot. We got 380,000 signatures. We blew it out of the water because people are mad. They're upset. My daughters and granddaughters have fewer rights than I had, and it's not acceptable. And every single woman knows that that is not acceptable. Even if they say they are pro-life, I talked to so many women who said, "I didn't mean this. I didn't mean that women should die of ectopic pregnancies. I didn't mean women shouldn't have an IUD or birth control or shouldn't be able to have a baby through IVF," right? And so it didn't impact them until now. But now that it impacts them, bring them in. Come on, girls. We're all going to go, and we're going to tell the boys what is going to happen in our states from now on, right? Except for the boys who are already on our side. We love them too. But I appreciate every single person on this call. Kerri, Kevin, thank you for setting it up.
That is incredible. For expecting 180,000 and getting over 300,000 signatures. That is awesome. So excited for Missouri, and hoping that Oklahoma can follow your example. Michele, how about you?
Well, I mean, I just have to reiterate what everyone else has said. I mean, this is an incredible panel of such powerful women who have such powerful messages and are sharing it in so many places. And I'm just thrilled to be here. I think that we've seen that Republicans, they're sort of the dog that caught the bus. And I think that our job right now is to make sure that they taste as much chrome as is humanly possible. They don't seem to like the taste of it right now, but, we've got November coming up. And so, Jane had mentioned that, when you're speaking with some people, just randomly walking up to folks and saying, "How are you doing? How are you feeling?" And sometimes, the answer that comes back, especially in red states, is one of despair and despondency and helplessness and feeling like everything that you're doing just isn't enough and it won't matter. And that is playing right into, Republicans' hands.
Absolutely.
We have to combat that. We have to combat it with hope and with determination and with resolve and with stories like, you know, we need 180,000 signatures and we get 380,000. I mean, that is the power. We have more power. We just have to use it. We have to mobilize it, and we have to share it with everyone. So thank you again for setting this up, for letting me be part of it. I'm absolutely thrilled. And thank you each and every one of you for everything that you're doing. It means a great deal.
Thank you all so much for your hard work, sometimes grueling work that's exhausting, but you know, women can handle a hell of a lot, and we got this. Working together, we can make positive change in our communities and in our country. So thank you all so much for being here. And Kevin, wherever you are, thank you for putting this together. Kevin will be in contact with everyone, and he will be pushing this out on the various platforms later this evening. So make sure you share it with everyone. And thank you again for sharing your experience and your time. I appreciate it. And good luck to all of you. Good luck, Gloria and Jane, in your races. And thank you, Jess and Michele, for everything that you're doing. I'll enjoy today. Hopefully you might get an opportunity to do a little marching or knocking doors or just talking to people about what we can do for positive change in our communities. Thank you, ladies. Bye-bye.
Girl power.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.